start this pre-weekend seminar. So it's a pleasure to have here Walter Quattrociocchi. Walter is a computer scientist, informatician, has worked a lot on social phenomena with actual social scientists. He got his degree in Siena, in Italy, then he has spent some time in the US, actually with us here, and has collaborated with some of the people in the institute. Then he went back to Italy, where he has been in Lucca for a couple of years, I believe, 4 years. Wow, time flies. And now he's leading a research group in Venice at the University of Foscari, who is one of the best universities in Italy. He has done a lot of work on fake news, echo chambers, the spreading of, as in the title, in our post-truth society. He has also advised the World Economic Forum on these topics, and he has been very active in the last few years. So it's a pleasure to have you here. And many of the people in the institute are very interested on these topics. Thank you very much.
Hi there. Thank you for your questions. And let's start with some hints, some gossip. By now, we are surrounded, flooded by this idea of fake news. We are invited by fake news. Everything is fake news. Reminding a bit of the Holy Office against the heretic thinking. Everything that is can be potentially fake and something that has to be true. But here there are some points that could be oversimplification if we don't shape the problem in the correct way. For instance, this is a fake news, no? Okay. Right? Even this one is a fake news. Okay. To an extent that in 2016 the word of the year is post-truth, meaning that we are more influenced by emotion than real fact when we have to take a decision. So basically we are not irrational. We are not rational. We discovered in 2016 that we are not rational. The human being is not rational. So we are advancing a lot. Or maybe something is changing from our expectation in this context. In fact, we have this book where the idea of the filter bubbles, where the algorithm shapes our world and provide information that are comfort for us, create our comfort zone. The problem is that we don't have any scientific evidence of the effect of the algorithm on that. This doesn't mean that this is false, but we don't know. So the scientific approach is to apply problems by using falsifiability. Falsifiability, so something is true if is it possible to falsify it. Okay, so we have to apply the scientific paradigm in this kind of context. And most of the time, when we are discussing about fake news, we are using emotion without falsifiability by promoting the scientific thinking. So it's a kind of paradox in this context. So I started here 5 years ago, more or less, and there was at that moment there was the time of the computational social science, in which we have to apply for different studies, basically using data to understand the social dynamics. But these kind of studies were started a long time before. So, for instance, this is the Ash dilemma, a famous experiment played by Ash, in which the subject was asked to tell which of the 3 bars on the right are longer as the bar in the left side. Okay, a simple experiment with a quantitative answer. So if it is equal, okay, otherwise no. But the problem is that in the configuration of the experiment, there were 8 actors suggesting from time to time the wrong answer. And the fact is that out of 18 trials, 12 were positive to deception. So we are not so rational as we think. Even in front of quantitative evidence, we still are embodied, our way of processing the information, reality and so on, is some way subject to some biases. And I would say that there was this ancient idea from the social science for which that is called the agenda setting. The more the coverage of a news, the more it is perceived to be important by the users. This question maybe in this time still holds, but the problem is that we changed, basically social media changed this idea of the agenda setting, in a sense that the most of the time we live in a hybrid system in which some things is driven by journalists, experts, selected by the users. On the other side, the most of the time, other times, journalists are acquiring information by topics that are already popular on social media. So this is this kind of double loop that create a kind of bypass that is called the disintermediation effect. So through social media, through internet, we can access a huge amount of information, and we actually can select the information we like the most, or the narrative we like the most. In fact, Facebook declared that they don't want to create other communities, but just allow information to circulate faster. Basically, providing tools for disintermediating the access to information. I can share the information that I like with my friends, and this creates an effect that can be positive, negative, we don't know. This is a scientific approach, so we want to understand the anatomy of these kind of processes. The problem still holds on the quality of the information. A lot of jokes, a lot of satirical content, a lot of fake news. Facebook is a wonderful tool to understand how society communicate, evolve, and create narratives. Still, we don't have data to understand how this narrative affect the public opinion. So when you hear someone blaming that Trump has been elected because of fake news, we don't have so much scientific evidence of that. It's still far from being proven scientifically. Maybe an idea. And how the disintermediation effect works. There was in a press room in the Quantico University, July 2015, where the army was announcing a military exercise on Texas against terrorism, a military exercise. Journalists present to the presentation start to tweet, live tweeting about the event, and in a couple of hours, it started to be a kind of the threat that Obama want to take over with the martial law prelude, Texas. And this was, in the end, a rumor that influenced a decision by Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, to control borders in case of invasion by the US Army on the soil of Texas. So that was a story. How in the disintermediated environment ecosystem information flows. This is another story. I mean, this is a nice example in Italy that basically belongs to a part of our experiment. Is the president, famous president, more or less considered as a symbol of honesty and democracy and so on. And basically, he has announced to quote this sentence that is some kind: when the government doesn't do what people want, people are allowed to revolt. He never said that. Never. It has been debunked several times by the Pertini Foundation, but still is old. Here, unlikely this is in Italian, but actually we get this is an important public television in Italy, and there is the guy basically distilling to the inquiring one policymaker asking why you put the sentence of the president on the flyer to invite people to the revolt, and the answer is we don't know if Pertini, the president, said it, but we like it. Okay, we like it. Kind of confirmation bias, no? You see, we acquire the information. Doesn't matter if those are true or not. The important is the coherence of the information with our narrative. And there are several examples. This is our another part of our experiment in which there is this fake senator that is called Senator as first name and Chirenga as second name. It is just a page on Facebook. and basically he asked for funds, policymakers, in case of defeat in the election, with 134 billion euros. That is more or less the 10% of the Italian GDP. This is totally fake, but it is still used in the public debate, arguing among parties. And the fact is that one of our biases is to think that the others are stupid. It is called identification bias. We can think that in this direction there are people that like that believe in hoax. They are really credulous. They are stupid in some way. But actually, this is not true. All of us are subject to confirmation bias and identification bias. This is another experiment, anecdotal experiment, let's say, just to show you how it works. This is an interview of mine on Wired, an important journal in Italy, the web magazine. And my interview, Walter Quattrociocchi, my name, that is the one commenting over there, it's me commenting. Okay, the interview was given to me. And I start to provoking the audience by trolling some way, by telling, oh, so basically you are blaming us that believe on alternative information sources. You prefer official information sources, so you think that you are better than us. The interview, remember, the interview was to me, so my name is listed 5 times, at least on the article, on the paper. 3 minutes later, a guy entered and said, oh, you not even read the paper. The interview was given to me. Okay, so we are blaming the others for the things we do. I didn't read the paper, but I was the one interviewed over there, commenting with the same name. So, the fact is that since 2013, this is considered to be one of the main threats for our society from the World Economic Forum. Massive digital misinformation. And it depends on a lot of issues. I mean, there is globalization ongoing, a lot of interconnectivity, scientific progress that evolve, but the most of people don't have the instruments to deal with this kind of implication. And the information overload. We are flooded by information, and the most of the time our attention is limited, the span of our attention is limited, so we pick up just the few details of the argument that we like the most, and we process the information in this way. So, for instance, can we say that this is true or false? In this question, I mean, how we can say that? How many of you see this black and blue? Please raise your hand. How many of you see this white and gold? Okay, so you see what is the problem of fake news. Our way of processing the information is based on approximation, biases. Our construction of reality is based on interpretation, interpretation of signals. So pretending that everything can be divided into true or false seems a little bit of fake news. So fact-checking the information, the idea that if I will put a mark that this information has been fact-checked is going to change the mind of the other people, probably is not so well structured. Okay. For instance, the problem on the internet is that the quotes found on the internet they are often false. Albert Einstein. But this is not Albert Einstein. This is an Italian singer, Bruno Lauzi. Okay. But actually, this is how to explain how our brain works. Curly white hair, mustache. You recognize that it's a singer just because there is a guitar. But without the guitar from the profile, probably it could pass in a first look that it could be Einstein. Okay, so we have to think in processing information. But the fact is that most of the time we don't have enough time to process this information. So we are not stupid. We are just immersed in a system in which our timing in responding and processing the information is changing. And so I want just to give you just some hints. So our aim, so this was a prelude, our experiment was to try to understand the role of confirmation bias in rumor spreading on social media. So confirmation bias is the attitude to acquire information that are coherent with our system of belief and to ignore dissenting information. So in order to do this kind of experiment, this is a collection of papers, it's not just one paper, I'm just doing the synthesis of the stuff. The fact is that we started to analyze Italian and US Facebook information sources from 2 really different narratives. One is the alternative conspiracy-like information, reporting on this kind of information, and the other one is the scientific information source, information diffusion, so dissemination, Isle of Science, Science, Scientific American, okay, these kind of sources. And we analyze the behavior of the users with the post of this kind of pages. After that, after quantifying the consumption of this kind of news, we try to understand how those kind of users respond, like and comments mainly, on information that were mocking the alternative narrative. So for instance, if you believe in natural medicine, how would you respond to someone telling you to put, I don't know, lemon on your eyes to cure your eyes, or if you have a bite from a mosquito, how would you respond by telling that a cactus could solve the problem of your scratch over there? So, intentional information, mocking the alternative narrative, how are liked and commented by users from the science and the conspiracy pages, interacting with these two kind of pages. Okay, and as a control, how alternative consumer of alternative information source respond to information dissenting their narrative. So if you believe in aliens, how would you respond to information, to someone, to a post that will tell you that aliens don't exist? Okay, so summarizing, two really different narratives, how the alternative audience respond to information mocking their narrative and to information dissenting their narrative. This is to prove the role of confirmation bias. Okay. To have some numbers, the first experiment is around 2 million users, more or less, in the Italian side, and on the banking side is on 55 million users on a time span of 5 years. Okay. So 2 million users in Italy and 55 million users in the US consuming alternative and scientific information sources. How they respond to information mocking the alternative narrative, how they interact with the information mocking their narrative, and how they interact with information dissenting their narrative. And actually, the results are pretty nice in a sense that they are sharp bimodal distribution. Users that follow scientific information just follow scientific information. Users that follow alternative information sources just follow alternative information sources. And there is a positive correlation between the number of likes on the post belonging to a specific narrative with the ratio of friends in your neighborhood, on your social network, on Facebook, doing the same. So basically it means that you are more or less surrounded by like-minded people. Okay, that's in this context, in this domain of analysis. This is the same in the US. And how they respond, how the conspiracy users, alternative information followers, respond to information moving in their narrative. Actually, they were liked and commented the most of the time by this kind of users, less by the users from the scientific side. Users usually exposed to this kind of information. So this give a hint of the fact that we interact with information. Doesn't matter the truth value of the information, but the important is the consistent with our narrative. So if I believe in aliens, doesn't matter if aliens exist or not. I want positive information in this direction. If I'm vegan, I want information that support my diet, that give a positive correlation of my diet. I don't want information blaming me because I'm vegan. This is the kind of frame of mind in this kind of context. As a proof, as a control, how alternative information sources, consumer of alternative information sources, respond to debunking information. So fact-checked information. We took dozens of debunking pages on Facebook that were reporting on demystifying hoaxes and so on, and counted how many of the users that usually interact with alternative information sources interact with these kind of sources. The fact is that just a few fractions interact with that, meaning that debunking information, dissenting information, are mainly ignored by the users. Okay? If I believe in aliens and you want to tell me that aliens do not exist, my reaction is to ignore this kind of information. I'm more interested in information confirming my point of view. Okay. There is this small fraction that still make the hope for journalists and some of the scientific board to tell that fact-checking still holds some merit in a sense. No? So we have to provide information, correct information in order for people to change their minds. So we went to measure how the little fraction of these users interacted on alternative pages before and after the exposure to the banking post. What we found here on the bottom is that most of them increased their weekly rate of comments and like on alternative information sources. That sounds consistent with the fact that if someone wants to blame me and want to debunk what I think that is true, my reaction is to go to my friends and ask for more confirmation of our shared thesis, right? Here. And this basically gave act to several. This doesn't mean that debunking doesn't work. This doesn't mean that fact-checking doesn't work. This is just an hint that on Facebook, in the Italian and Facebook environment, the attitude is to take information, to interact with information that are consistent with our system of belief, with our ideas, and to ignore dissenting information. If I start to fight with someone that is against my opinion, my worldview, generally it evolves in a kind of hate speech, and we did this kind of analysis. Okay, this is another work that doesn't matter. I mean, I want to stress just one single point here, is that actually, if we are immersed in a world of like-minded people, on Facebook for instance, we probably tend to be more extreme than if we are taking alone. So if I am a supporter of Red Sox, for instance, if I'm alone, I will be more moderate in expressing my support and emotion and so on. If there are two people that are supporting the same thesis, probably we will be more extreme in doing that. And this is called the law of group polarization. Group of like-minded people tend to be more extreme in this direction. And actually, we answered partially to this question by analyzing the evolution of the sentiment of the users that are commenting in the same echo chamber by measuring the trend of their comments. What we found is that the more they comment on the group of like-minded people, the more they tend to be negative. And things get even worse in the few posts in which polarized users of both sides start a fight on a post together. Okay, so this is the idea. We can access a huge amount of information. We pick the information we like the most. We start to comment on this kind of news sources. We end up in being friends with people that are like-minded with us. We structure our community and we start to cooperate to shape this narrative. So, the main issue on Facebook right now is polarization. We did a paper, last month where we went to measure the correlation between polarizing topics, so topics that amplify this effect of polarization of the users in their groups, and topics that are topic of fake news. And we found a correlation of the 91%. So the more a topic is polarizing, the more the probability that this is a topic of fake news. It doesn't matter if this is true or false. We do not acquire this kind of information. For instance, that was the Washington Post in 2015, when we presented this result about the debunking that doesn't play too much effect in this, closed their debunking column. They have this debunking column on, and Caitlin, that was the journalist, citing my works, just said probably I'm doing a side effect by amplifying the rumors and increasing polarization on this issue. So, still to me is a mystery why it is difficult to understand that sometimes debunking, the communication is important in the way we are promoting narrative and messages. However, by exploiting this analysis, we think that one approach is to understand what are the emotions, the feelings of the audience, of the users, about some specific topic, and then provide a kind of tailored information. In these days, this year, we started a project in the London School of Economics and an important Italian newspaper, Corriere della Sera, in which we are analyzing the sentiment, emotions of the users with respect to immigration. So what are the topics, what are the popular topics, what are the polarizing topics, what are the engagement of the users, topics that engage the most amount of users, what are the different narratives, because there is not just one narrative about migration, but there are several groups talking about immigration. And so, according to this, how we can tailor through Corriere a message, a storytelling that is able to bypass this threshold of neglecting dissenting information. So how to attract their attention in order to smooth polarization. I don't know how to do that, this is still in progress, it's an experiment that we want to try a different way of presenting an information, because especially on the anti-vax process, in Italy we have several problems in this direction, because we are below the threshold. But the problem is that it's not a matter of reputation, because the World Health Organization in 2016 told that in Italy we were running below some warnings about our vaccination threshold. And so it was taken by the conspiracy alternative party like a kind of ingerence of the World Health Organization in promoting Big Pharma, the conspiracy of the big Pharma. 3 months later, it was the case that cancer correlates with consumption of meat. The same community said toward the same organization, the World Health Organization, that even the World Health Organization was supporting this issue. So this means that it doesn't matter who is telling the news. What is important is how the news fit in my narrative, in my context. And in doing that, we have to account for the perspective, the emotion of the users in consuming information and the way they process and polarize the public debate. And if we look at the Italian referendum, in Italy we have this evidence so that actually consuming fake news is not a matter of the populistic side, while on the other side we have rational use of information. No, fake news were used on both sides in this direction, because it's kind of propaganda. Actually, it's not a kind of, it has been always like this. We use information to convince, to persuade other people. On Facebook, we don't change the mind of other people. What we can do is to involve people that are already prone to a specific kind of attitude to move, to change, to participate in the debate. So this is just a matter of volumes of the things we are doing. And one main objection that was made to our works is that we selected 2 really different narratives, the scientific and the conspiracy one, so it's normal that we found such a strong polarization. So we did another study on a 6 years time span by analyzing the interaction of 376 millions of users on 20 millions of posts on a global scale, and what we found is this simple trend. The more you are active, either in terms of like and comments, either in your lifetime, the less the number of pages you are active on. So the more you are active, the less the number of pages you look. So there is a kind of specialization. There is a point in which we start to focus on a limited number of sources. And this leads to this kind of configuration. We found 5 communities, really polarized, and users are confined in that ecosystem. So it's the same behavior as before, pretty much similar. It's not true that the more we are active, the more we have different options. we have limits in our brain that account for our attention, in which on the sources we can follow. So we start to be engaged on specific sources, and we are over there, stuck over there. We did the same analysis for the Brexit, during the Brexit campaign, and what we found is a strong polarization. This time we do not select the information sources, we just apply simple community detection algorithm that provided the existence of two communities, really polarized communities, and those two polarized communities are identified by the pro-Brexit and against Brexit. And we went to measure how topics of the post with which users of the two communities interacted with, and analyzed the kind of sentiment they use to promote on this issue, to understand the attitude towards specific topics. So, for instance, if you are against Brexit, you will have a positive attitude toward Euro, while if you are for Brexit, this will be negative. And we basically listed all these kind of issues, understanding what are the more polarizing topics, where the distance is higher in this context. And from this we got the idea of coming to the immigration discussion in Italy, trying to understand what are the really polarizing topics, and trying to smooth this polarization. And actually, what I think that has to be done as a scientist, and I hope to find here some positive feedback in this direction, is that we are living in a really complicated world in which social media changed the way we consume information, giving access directly to information, bypassing the expert. And instead of having the collective intelligence, we have a huge segregation, because we end up in creating clusters around shared narrative. And it's easier to find information we like the most. The problem, and this is not a problem, the problem is that we are not communicating. The problem is the missing communication among users, the polarization. Because if we approach someone that is not vaccinating his kids, instead of telling them, you are stupid, you have to vaccinate, probably the result would be a kind of resistance in this direction. Probably it would be better to have a kind of personal interchange. So communicating science in a way that is possible to enter in the debate, even on the alternative side. And this cannot be done by telling what is said by science is true and your stuff are fake. We know that is true. We know this works like this. But actually, the problem is that in communicating, we have to account for the audience, because the audience is the responsible of our reputation and the authority of the speaker. So I'm not talking in the name of science just because I'm a scientist, because you know many bullshit most of the time come out of scientific papers and so on. So we have to avoid the error to pass science as a religion, because if we start to use science like a kind of dogma, promoting science, you don't have to discuss, you don't know, so I am the leader, you have to understand and to trust what I tell you because I'm a scientist. This would not work, especially where there is a high distrust in official institutions. With another work recent on the polarization in different European countries, Italy, France, Germany, and England, and we found that actually the less the polarization of the users, the less fake news. And where there is less polarization, I don't know if those things are correlated, but actually there is a higher trust in journalism. I don't know if this is a point, but still, the problem is large and solutions are far to come. But still, we have to avoid polarization. And polarization happens even when we are promoting our communicating science. And I think that this is the solution, actually.
Comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought, end quote. That was John F. Kennedy in 1962. But the problem has only become worse. From the Facebook and Twitter feeds we monitor to the algorithms that determine the results of our web searches based on our previous browsing history and location, our major sources of information are increasingly engineered to reflect back to us the world as we already see it. They give us the comfort of our opinions without the discomfort of thought. So you have to find a way to break out of your echo chambers. This is tougher than it sounds, especially when it comes to the issues you care most about. But it is in your interest to engage the people you disagree with rather than shutting them out or shutting them up. Not only because it gives you a chance to challenge their views, and maybe even change them, but also because sometimes they may just be right.
So that was more or less the issue. So it's a huge work, a huge work, a lot of work still to be done, and I hope that the scientific community is not polarizing on this issue on specific thesis or hypothesis, but we should work together to find eventual solution or creating tools to clean the information ecosystem. That's more or less
Question?
Yeah, you always refer to the situation in which you already are very confident in what you believe, and at that point probably you don't want to hear anything else, right? But before that, you need to get information in order to make your mind. What about those? Because probably those are also a lot of people, there are younger, that don't have an opinion about the Brexit. But before you have a strong opinion about the Brexit, you have to really inform yourself. And then probably you go then to an echo chamber. But not before, no? Or if I want to become a vegan, probably I need to see, first what are the pros and the cons, and then I want to...
In this context, there are different hypotheses. It depends on the kind of approach you take from the psychology. There is basically the one that is structural, that tells basically that you don't spend too much time in finding what you are looking for. You recognize it. In fact, we did a kind of experiment on this. We analyzed how many times you fluctuate around two different echo chambers before to be stuck on that, and actually the average number is 3 likes. So the problem is that what happened before the like, but we cannot measure that.
And that's for Facebook.
Yeah. Facebook and YouTube. This result is for Facebook and YouTube, where we found on both platforms has really strong polarization.
Just an account because I want to know your opinion on this. So you said that one way, let's say, like the problem with this section, you try to be less defensive in terms of what is the scientific truth and why your, let's say, your work doesn't work. But another interpretation of that is that, at least one of the things people say is that since anyway Facebook or Twitter are public forums, in principle, it's not that I'm arguing with you because I'm really trying to convince you, but more because I want to see to convince the others and not actually engaging in the message. So have you tried to measure what is this indirect effect? Or actually the people maybe are liking a page, following a page, but not actually actively commenting or liking on posts. Because that could be, to give you an idea of what is the most, let's say, effective approach to...
Our measures are limited on what we can see on Facebook. So like and comments, we cannot measure this kind of effect. We don't have enough data. The data structure doesn't allow yet to count these kind of issues. Because it would require to map users on specific topics and to track their activity online, even on other pages, and we don't have access to this data. Probably this like this, but I don't know. But the point is that I'm not saying that science has to communicate that we have fallacy. We have to communicate with honesty.
No, I understood you.
Yeah, the point. Vaccination are good. You have to tell two people that it's better to vaccinate someone instead of dying of measles. That's the point. The problem is the way you communicate that. Because if you communicate it in a harsh way, and the result is to backfire, so to increase the polarization, I don't think that we are working on the good direction. Right? That's my point. Even proposing the scientific method like a kind of dogma. Wait, scientific method is one of the most democratic thinking that exists. A taxi driver can be right if something is proved to be scientifically correct. Right? This is my point. So in this context, we have to avoid to give the perception of science like a kind of elite. There is, because people are distrusting things that are difficult to understand. If you complicate more the stuff, you are not reaching the audience. You are not reaching the objective of communicating that science is working for you.
Yeah, please.
In a kind of similar way, I had a question about the plot where the fewer sources that you're engaging in, the more polarized you become. That was the result, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious about the pages themselves that those people are a part of. So if there's a page that's actually contributing to a lot of polarization, is there heterogeneity within those types of pages about the people who contribute to making that polarized? So like, is there a certain threshold that this page needs of people who are devoted to only this sort of like news source, like 10 people who are really devoted to it, and then that sort of like initiates some sort of like polarization snowball? Or is
there what we are doing right now?
Okay.
So you probably will have some result in the next months. We still under analysis in this areas. And that was a very interesting question to understand what are the drivers.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. But still we don't have the answer on this.
Yeah. Just one note, the scientific method is a dogma. Please, I don't want to hear those things. In the sense that if we start questioning the scientific method and the things that from time to time there are stories that cannot be simply explained, that becomes troubling, because it's also the way, the moment that you say that the scientific method doesn't work or is questionable or whatever it is, then it's you're basically destroying the foundation of what we are doing, and that's something that for me it's very uncomfortable as a thinking. So I believe that I agree that there is a psychology of approaching the external audience, and I agree with you that increase of polarization doesn't help, but also that doesn't mean to say, okay, let's discuss everything. So okay, everything is on the table, because that would be introducing a relativism that in science is not there. However, going into science, the question here, I see a lot of your work is a kind of ethnographic, so with a lot of analysis of the signal, etc. In your slides about this observatory for news and media, etc., you talk about models. So where are the models entering here? Because I don't see any model, nor generative or statistical, what's happening now.
It's, the fact is that we apply a kind of preferred model in this kind of context by analyzing basically the diffusion of the news as if it is a kind of the bounded confidence model. So modeling the process, basically accounting for a kind of threshold. The less the threshold of tolerance, the more the polarization. That's the kind of model we are applying in using this. And the kind of model to predict the emergence of polarizing topics is based on machine learning approaches. Basically, we work on the predictive machine learning construction of these issues, because I have to decline this in terms of computer science, otherwise I won't be able to in this field. Yes, the modeling is still a novel process. We are collecting data in order to build the main model on this. And the model actually, the model that best fit the dynamics is the bounded confidence model.
Is there any other question? Okay, thank you very much, Walter.